The house looked perfect from the outside. Vines climbed the stone wall. Light spilled from warm windows. Laughter sometimes drifted through the trees like a soft song that never finished its last note. Neighbors waved and said they were a lovely couple. People often said that when they did not know the whole story. Inside, the kitchen smelled like oranges and coffee. A clock ticked with a steady heartbeat. The sink shone like a mirror. On the counter sat a crystal bowl full of limes that no one ever used. The room was clean in a way that felt careful. Careful often means something is being hidden. She stood by the window and watched the street. Her name was Mara. She was 44, tall and gentle, with eyes that always looked like they had more to say. Her sweater hung loose. Her hands were soft, but one finger shook when she set down her cup. She took a breath that sounded like a secret and opened the cabinet under the sink. Behind a row of cleaning sprays sat a small metal tin. Inside, wrapped in a cloth like a gift, she kept the little pills that helped her forget. She told herself it was only for the nerves. She told herself it was only when she needed it. She told herself many things. In the study at the back of the house, he checked his email and rubbed a spot on his wrist where his watch used to leave a mark. His name was Julian. He was 47, tall, dark hair at his temples gone a little gray. He had the even voice of a man who won arguments without raising it. He liked good shoes and old jazz. He liked being known as a steady hand. He did not like questions about the years before he met Mara. When people asked about that time, he smiled and moved the topic along, like a waiter removing a plate. They had been married for 20 years. They had a daughter in college who called on Sundays, and a garden that made the spring smell expensive. They had a framed wedding photo where two young faces glowed under a simple church window. They also had a trunk in the attic that no one opened. Inside were letters from people they did not speak to anymore, a box of old receipts, and a folder with a court stamp on it. The trunk was heavy, but the silence around it was heavier. On a Thursday, their friends invited them to a dinner by the river. It was a reunion of sorts. Old faces, new stories, good wine. Mara stared at the message for a long time. Reunions were dangerous. The past likes to attend them without an invite. Julian appeared in the doorway, leaning on the frame the way he did when he wanted to look casual but was already decided. He said it would be good to go. He said they could use a night out. He did not say that one of the guests had once been his business partner and another had once been a person he had promised something else to. He did not say that the river made him think of a city he left behind. Mara smiled and nodded. She did not say that her hands shook worse in rooms with too many bottles. She did not say that in her dresser, under a stack of scarves, there was a small white packet with a blue stripe that made her heart race and her mouth dry. She did not say that she had tried to stop and failed more times than she could count without crying. The day of the dinner came dressed in clear sky and soft wind. She put on a navy dress that fit like a promise. He wore the gray suit that made everyone call him handsome. They looked good together in the hall mirror. They looked like people who had everything under control. They drove through streets that watched their whole marriage. The sun slid down the buildings like melted gold. The river flashed silver between trees. The restaurant sat at the edge of the water, all glass and warm light, the kind of place where the food was small and the bills were not. Voices spilled out like music when they walked in. Every face turned. Smiles, hugs, the quick scans people do when they are happy to see you and curious about how your life turned out. The first glass of wine looked harmless. It always did. The first glass was not the problem. The fifth was. The small white packet in Mara's bag was the real problem. She felt it like a stone against her palm. The packet made a promise too. It always did. It promised to make the noise in her head stop. It promised to take the burn out of shame. It promised to make her brave enough to stay in the room. They sat. Someone told a funny story. Another person asked about their daughter. Everyone laughed. The waiter poured more wine. The room warmed. The river outside moved in slow black sheets. A woman named Elise arrived late, hair pinned up, lips red, eyes quick. She kissed cheeks and slid into the empty chair across from Julian. The air changed, just a little. Not enough for most people to notice. Mara noticed. Wives always notice. Elise asked about the firm. She asked if Julian still consulted. She asked if he still used the old office on Westbridge. Westbridge was a street Mara had never heard him mention. Mara tilted her head and took a slow sip. The man beside Elise lifted his glass and said he remembered the early days when Julian was trying to dig himself out. He said he admired the hustle. He said something about how some people rebuild faster than others after a fall. He smiled when he said it. It did not sound like a compliment. The table went quiet, the way tables do when a plate drops in the kitchen. The sound may be small, but the world feels it. Julian smiled that even smile. He turned the room back toward a harmless joke. He asked about vacations. He asked about children. He poured wine into glasses that didn't need it. Mara's hand slid into her bag under the table. Her fingers found the packet. Her heart hit the inside of her chest like a door. She could walk to the bathroom and be fine in 5 minutes. She could come back with a calm smile and a steady voice. She could if she stood up. She did not stand up. Elise's laugh cut the room again. It had the kind of sound that makes people lean in. She said she sometimes missed the wild years when they all lived downtown and no one slept. She said she and Julian used to map the city at 3 a.m. with paper cups of coffee and bad plans. She said the past was another country you only visit when you forget why you left. She looked at Mara when she said it. Mara lifted her glass and tasted something bitter that was not the wine. Halfway through dinner, the river wind found a gap in the door and slipped across the floor like a warning. The waiter brought a second bottle. The waiter brought a third. Glass hearts and bitter wine do not go well together. One will break. It is usually the heart. At dessert, a man from the end of the table raised his hand for quiet and made a toast to honesty. He said it with a laugh, but the word got into the walls and stayed there. Honesty. Rooms know when that word is said for real. The lights seemed to hum a little louder. The river pressed itself against the glass like a listener. Elise started first. She told a story about a night long ago in a loft with mattresses on the floor and a record that skipped on the best part. She told the story like it was fun. In the middle of her story, a name fell out of her mouth. It was a woman's name Mara had never heard. The name attached itself to a date. The date attached itself to the first year of Mara and Julian's marriage. The math did not feel kind. Julian set down his fork. He did not move for a long breath. Then he nodded as if he had expected this moment to arrive, only not tonight, and not with so much glass between him and the river. He said the past had been hard. He said he had not been who he wanted to be back then. He said that sometimes the story you tell about yourself is only a wish until you make it true. He said it simply. People respect simple. Mara stared at the candle and watched the flame bend when someone laughed. She remembered a letter she had found years ago tucked inside a book. She remembered a late phone call that stopped when she walked into the room. She remembered a ring box in a drawer that did not belong to her. She remembered deciding not to know more. She felt very calm. Calm can be a kind of numb. Across the table, a friend with kind eyes asked Mara about her art. She told him she was not painting much these days. He said that was a shame. He said she used to glow when she talked about color. She smiled. She did not say that color had only recently come back to her life in the form of small pills that turned whole hours into fog. The bathroom had a large mirror that made people look prettier than they felt. Mara stood in front of it and did not take the packet out of her bag. She held the edge of the sink with both hands and watched her face try to be brave. A stall door opened, and the woman from the end of the table stepped out. She was new to the group. She had sweet, tired eyes and a quiet way. She said the light in the restaurant made everyone look honest, which was either a joke or a prayer. She washed her hands and left. Mara stayed and counted to 50. She did not know what she was counting toward. Back at the table, the man beside Elise told another story he should have kept. He said Julian had once filed for bankruptcy under a different address to protect the car he loved. He said the whole thing was smart, if not very noble. He said he would have done the same. He grinned and asked the table what they would do for love. He looked at Mara when he said love. She looked at the river. Julian's hand tightened on his glass. He smiled again. The smile cracked a little at the edge. He said people do what they must until they can do better. He said that was true for everyone. He looked at Mara when he said everyone. Mara knew half of it. She knew about the money troubles because the mail started coming to the house with thicker envelopes and thinner kindness. She knew about the first marriage because she had found a photo that did not fit anywhere and a certificate folded into a shirt. She had put both back and closed the drawer. She had known 50% and lived as if that was all there was. Half a truth can look like the whole thing if you don't turn on all the lights. Julian knew half of it too. He knew her wine disappeared faster than it should. He knew her pupils were sometimes too wide in the morning and too small at night. He knew she cleaned the bathroom more often than anyone cleans a bathroom. He had found a small metal tin under the sink once and had put it back like a man who touches a flame and decides it did not burn. The table talked louder. Secrets, once they spill, keep running downhill. People make jokes when they are scared. People get brave when the room does not belong to them. Someone lifted a glass and said the world is made of lies we agree to live with. Someone else said the truth is only useful when you can afford it. Laughter came in waves. The waiter cleared plates that no one had finished. Mara's hand found Julian's under the table. His fingers closed around hers. It was a small bridge in a loud storm. They looked at each other and saw the same thing. Two people who had tried to build a life out of soft and strong and made mistakes they could not erase. They left before coffee. The night air felt like water on a burn. The river watched without comment. They drove home in silence. The kind of silence that is not empty, but full of words that do not know their order yet. In the kitchen, she put her bag on the chair and opened the drawer where the corkscrew lived. She did not take out a bottle. She took out the tin from under the sink and set it on the counter. The metal looked small and mean under the bright light. He stood in the doorway and did the same. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase and set it beside the tin. The folder was thick with papers no married person wants to read. They stood side by side and looked at the two objects that had followed them for years, like stray dogs they kept feeding because closing the door felt cruel. She spoke first. Her voice was steady. She said the pills started as a way to sleep. Then they were a way to be brave at parties. Then they were a way to feel nothing when feeling anything was too much. She said she could stop and had stopped many times. She said she could also start again in one bad minute. She said she was scared of herself. The words did not break her. Saying them held her together. He spoke next. He said the truth was uglier before it got better. He said he had lost more than money back then. He had lost his name in places that remembered everything. He said he had a first wife for a short time, and the paper trail of that marriage was tucked in a drawer, as if paper had the power to bury the past. He said he had built a better life on top of a shaky foundation and was afraid it would all sink if he told the whole story. He said he had become a good man by pretending he already was one. He said it worked until tonight. They did not scream. They did not throw things. They did not break the crystal bowl of limes. They stood very still in the bright kitchen and watched the two small objects on the counter like they were wild animals. Then they began to name rules. No more wine in the house. If wine must be had, it would be at a restaurant and with food, and with a rule for how much. The tin would go, not to a new hiding place, to a place that locked and gave receipts and 12-step schedules and the names of doctors who did not care who anyone thought they were. A meeting on Monday, another on Thursday, a list on the fridge with numbers to call. The folder would be emptied in truth, not in fire. Every debt note, every legal paper, every name, Everything would be told, and where needed, repaid. A plan to go backward so they could finally go forward without a ghost on the passenger seat. They would sleep in the same house, but with space if needed. A door could close without it being a threat. A bed on the other side of the hall if a night was bad. Check-ins every morning at 8. A walk every evening at 6. Honesty at breakfast. Honesty again before bed. Every new truth said quickly, not saved for some special time that never comes. Their daughter would not carry it. She would hear only what was safe for her to hear. She would not become the parent to her parents. She would not grow up afraid of phones ringing. They wrote the rules on a pad with a blue pen that left blots. The page looked like a small treaty. It looked fragile and brave. The first week was hard. The second week was harder. The third week was a little less hard. She shook through mornings and held hot tea like a rope. He stared at spreadsheets that made less sense when the numbers had to be honest. She cried without warning. He sat on the back steps at night and stared at the dark yard, a man learning how to be quiet without hiding. They saw a counselor in a small office that smelled like basil and old books. They learned how to say simple things in full sentences. I am scared. I am angry. I am tired. I need help. I love you. I love you does not erase the other sentences. It holds them in place. Their friends called. Some friends disappeared. Some moved closer. Elise sent an apology that came too late and landed like a feather anyway. The man who joked about bankruptcy sent a message that said he was sorry for the old story. It was not his to tell. The message felt small and useful, like a Band-Aid over a scratch from a day that hurt more than it should have. Months passed. The house stayed tidy, but not careful. A little mess returned and felt like life. The crystal bowl of limes went away. A bowl of apples took its place. Apples get eaten. Limes wait for a drink. On a rainy afternoon, Myra found her paints at the back of the closet. She set up a small table by the window and began with gray, then added a soft blue, then a line of gold thinner than a hair. The picture became a river with a faint light across it, like hope that did not shout. She did not need pills to feel brave enough to look at it. She felt scared and painted anyway. Julian met with a man from the old days and paid what he could pay. He shook a hand that used to close like a fist and walked out into a street that smelled like bread. He did not feel heroic. He felt like a person who had finally stopped pretending to float and learned how to swim. They did not become perfect. They became slow. Slow was good. Slow lets the heart catch up. 1 year later, their daughter came home for a long weekend. She asked if they were happy. They said they were honest. She laughed and said that sounded harder. They said it was. She hugged them both and left her coat on the back of a chair in a way that would bother neat people and comfort those who know what a full house is like. On their 20th anniversary, they did not book a fancy dinner. They packed a basket and drove to the river at sunset. The same river, different season. The water moved like a quiet promise. They spread a blanket on the grass and watched a small boat cut the surface in a straight line that made sense. He took out a folded paper from his pocket. It was the list they had written that first night. The paper had coffee stains and a corner torn off. He read it like a prayer. She listened and leaned her head on his shoulder. He put the paper back and kissed the top of her hair the way he used to when they were young and careless. They were older now. They were careful in the right ways. They went home as the sky turned dark purple. The house waited with its soft lights and clean kitchen and bowl of apples. In the hall mirror, they looked like people who had been broken and did not hide the cracks. Glass hearts can be fixed. The repair lines shine if the light hits them right. They climbed the stairs. Their feet made the old wood sing. The night settled over the roof like a calm hand. The past stayed where it belonged, not erased, not calling the shots. The future did not rush. It walked beside them at a pace they could keep. They turned off the lights.
The house went quiet. The clock kept its steady heartbeat. In the dark, truth did not feel like a threat anymore. It felt like a window left open to let the room breathe. They slept under the same roof, not because nothing had happened, but because everything had, and they had chosen the hard, honest work of staying. In the morning, the kitchen would smell like oranges again. The apples would be one less. The river would keep moving, and they would sit at the table with coffee and a clean page and decide again to tell each other the truth. That was how they learned to live.